Welcome back to our session. We are looking at revising acids and bases. Now we'll look at different types of questions and also try and emphasize on the technique, and how we apply the knowledge that we've gained in as far as chemical change, but with particular reference to acids and bases. Right, the question reads, a few drops of bromothymol blue, okay? So this is an indicator added to a potassium hydroxide solution in a beaker. A dilute sulfuric acid, all right, solution is now gradually added to this solution until there is a color change, right? So in trying to unpack this problem, we understand that the reaction is between potassium hydroxide, which is a base, and a dilute sulfuric acid solution, which is an acid. So typically, in terms of the type of reaction, this is an acid-base reaction, right? Okay. So if we have an acid and a base, what do we expect to get from this reaction? We're getting a salt and water, right? Okay. Then the question says, what type of acids and bases are present in this reaction, right? So if we can go back to that, we are looking at the type, right? Now remember, we've got weak acids, strong acids, weak bases, strong bases. So this question precisely is demanding of us to say, are we able to identify, a given substance as a strong acid or strong base, or weak acid and weak base? Okay, so but generally the reaction concerned in this case is an acid-base type of a reaction. So it's a pretty much straightforward question that has to do with you remembering the classification of acids and bases. Now, if you look at sulfuric acid as a solution, okay, this is actually a strong acid, right? Now, what determines the strength of an acid, right, is that this acid dissociates completely. So in solution, sulfuric acid dissociates completely, okay? So there's complete dissociation, right? And then we also have potassium hydroxide, right, which is a strong base, right? Now, why is it a strong base? We know that all strong bases, they ionize completely in solution. Okay? So complete ionization and complete dissociation are the characteristics that we use to identify the acid and base in this particular reaction. Right. Okay. Then the question goes on and says, write down a balanced equation for this reaction. Right. So the reaction is between sulfuric acid and potassium hydroxide. Okay. So if, say for argument's sake, we have appreciated that this is an acid, okay, plus base, right? What does it give us? Generally, it will give us a salt, okay, plus water, right? So this is an acid-base type of a reaction. So the formula of the reactants in this case have been given. So we just copy them because these are our two reactants, and then that's the salt and the water are molecules that are formed. So now the question is more about balancing in this case. Now, if we look at this equation, if you look at potassium on the right-hand side, it's K2. So we need to put a 2 there, right? And then we check the hydrogen. Hydrogen on the left, it's 4, right? 2 from the sulfuric acid, and then 2 in potassium hydroxide. Then we can put a 2 there. So the stoichiometric ratio in which they react is a mole of the acid reacts with 2 moles of potassium hydroxide to form a mole of the salt and 2 moles of water. So this is the balanced equation. So if there are going to be any questions that have to do with the stoichiometry, so this stoichiometric ratio comes into effect, then we can able to actually apply it, right? Okay, and then it says here, what color change occurs in this reaction? Right, now if we talk about a change, we must first recognize that the few drops of bromothiamyl blue are added to the potassium hydroxide solution in the beaker. So initially, we need to ask ourselves, what's the color of bromothiamyl blue in the presence of a strong base, right? Because this is a strong base plus strong acid reaction, okay? So this is strong acid plus strong base, okay? Type of an acid-base reaction, because this is what is important in us coming up with a suitable choice of the indicator for this reaction. So in the presence of a strong base, bromothiamyl blue will be blue in color, okay? So the initial color is blue. So as we continue to add a solution of dilute sulfuric acid, there will be a color change when this neutralization reaction takes place, okay? So this is a neutralization reaction, okay? Okay. So when the resulting solution becomes neutral, there is a color change of the indicator. So the color change will change from blue to pale green, right? So if the solution is neutral, the color of bromothiamyl blue is pale green. Why are we saying the color change is from one color to the other? The question says, what color change? So we need to recognize that the few drops were initially added into the solution of potassium hydroxide. And then we asked ourselves a question to say, what's the color of bromothiamyl blue in the presence of a strong acid? It's blue in color. So if we continue adding the acid, a reaction, neutralization reaction does take place. So when the resulting solution becomes neutral, what's the color change that's going to happen? It's from blue to pale green, right? So that's how we arrived at that. Okay, and then, so the color of bromothiamyl blue in a strong base is blue, okay? And then as we continue to add, and then when the resulting solution is neutral, it will be green. So it's from blue to green. That's how we arrived at that, right? And then the question goes further and says, a few drops of bromothiamyl blue are added to the beaker. A diluted solution is now gradually added until there is a color change. So that's when we arrived at the pale green. What color change occurs in this reaction? We're able to say from blue to pale green. And then the follow-up question says, a few additional drops, right, of the acid. Now we're adding more and more acid into the beaker. Now the solution is already neutral. Now we continue to add more acid. It means that in that container, there is more of the acid. And then it says, and the color of the solution changes as we add additional drops of the acid into the solution. Now, what color change occurs now? Now we have to go back and say, if you have an acidic solution, okay, and then there is bromothiamyl blue, what color is going to be observed? So remember, we started with blue, which was the color of the indicator, bromothiamyl blue, in the presence of a strong base. When neutralization occurred, the solution turned pale green. But then the question says, we kept on adding more and more acid. It means now the resulting solution becomes more acidic. Now the question is, what color is bromothiamyl blue is change in terms of, a strong acid? So we understand that what is going to happen is that in the presence of a strong acid, the bromothiamyl blue changes to yellow. So that's the color change, right? Okay, so, and then it says here, this color change, actually, it will change from, we're saying, from neutral, which was pale green, okay, to yellow. Okay, that was the color change that takes place. And then, obviously, this is our balanced equation for the neutralization reaction that would have occurred, right? And then the last question says, name the salt, right, that is formed in the reaction represented by the balanced chemical equation. So we said it's acid plus base, strong acid plus strong base, to give us a salt, okay, and water, okay? Now, the question says, name, okay, be careful, they can be name or formula, or both. In this case, we are able to identify that this is the formula of the salt that is formed. So we go back to chemical formulae and naming compounds. Then we are expected to actually give the name of K2SO4. So the appropriate name for this salt is potassium sulfate. Right. So that's the name of the salt that is formed. So that's basically some of the concepts that are very important in terms of responding to questions of this nature. Right. Right. We'll take a short break for now. When we come back, we'll look at more of the structured questions on revising acids and bases. See you after the break.